All right, so we should be good. Can you try your mic again, Josh? Great.
The performance evaluation for the department begins on page 5. From fiscal 2024 to 2025, individuals in DPSES jurisdiction increased by 206 individuals, or 1%. This growth rate has slowed. From fiscal 2023 to 2024, there was an increase of 560 individuals, or about 3%. The fiscal 2025 population is substantially lower than historic population trends, as shown in Exhibit 1 on page 6. The prison population was approximately 20% higher 10 years ago. Moving on to Baltimore City arrests and commitments on page 8, Exhibit 3. Arrests increased in fiscal 2025 by 5%, with about 16,000 arrests processed. Commitments also increased by about 5%, with 9,500 commitments. Both arrests and commitments saw significant 10-year declines, with a 50% decline for arrests and a 48% decline for commitments from fiscal 2016. There has been an overall increase in criminal supervision cases driven by a rise in probation cases. Criminal supervision includes parole, probation, and mandatory release. Exhibit 4 on page 9 shows the number of cases under community supervision for the past 6 years. In fiscal 2025, there were 86,714 criminal supervision cases. Criminal supervision cases increased by about 1.5%, which was driven by a rise in probation cases. In fiscal 2025, there were also about 4,500 cases under the pretrial release supervision program and 15,560 cases under the drinking driver monitor program. Exhibit 5 on page 10 discusses the number of assaults in correctional and pretrial facilities. In fiscal 2025, the rate of individual-on-individual assaults was an average of about 15 assaults per 100 incarcerated individuals. This is an increase of over 100% from 5 years ago. The rate of individual-on-staff member assaults was 6.8 per 100 incarcerated individuals, an increase of 127% from 5 years ago. Homicides also increased in recent years. The department reported 7 homicides in fiscal 2025, all of which were in correctional facilities. This marks an increase from 5 homicides the year before. The Maryland State Police has reported 11 inmate deaths so far in fiscal 2026. Those investigations into those deaths are ongoing. DPSES should discuss the reasons for the increase in assault and homicide rates in its facilities and discuss efforts it is taking to reduce violence on staff and incarcerated individuals. Moving on to the budget, the fiscal 2027 budget includes proposed deficiency appropriations that increase the fiscal 26 appropriation by $87 million. The major deficiencies include $30 million to cover shortfalls related to lower than expected vacancy savings, $30 million to cover fiscal 2025 shortfalls from the inmate medical and mental health care contracts, and $17.5 million to bring budgeted turnover in line with fewer than expected vacancies. There's also a $5 million deficiency related to a new federal contract to operate the Chesapeake Detention Facility. Finally, there is a $30 million deficiency in the dedicated purpose account to fund emergency facility maintenance projects across DPSES facilities. The funding will be used for large projects to maintain existing facilities, such as fire suppression systems and security fencing. DPSES should discuss which facilities will receive emergency maintenance projects and how the funding will be prioritized. DPSES's fiscal 2027 allowance totals approximately $1.9 billion. Exhibit 6 on page 12 displays the allowance categorized by major spending areas, with personnel costs at $1.2 billion, mainly for salaries of correctional officers. Other significant areas of spending are inmate medical care, contractual services, supplies and materials, and fuel and utilities. Exhibit 7 on page 13 breaks down the allocation of the budget by major units of DPSCS. 60% of the budget, or $1.1 billion, supports corrections. Accounting for all proposed efficiencies, overall DPSCS funding in fiscal 2027 declines by $20.9 million, or 1.1%. Exhibit 8 on page 14 provides details on the allowance and the major changes. The largest decrease includes $20.1 million for major IT development projects, including the computerized criminal history and electronic patient health records projects. These IT projects will be discussed further in the administration analysis. Other decreases include $4 million in land improvements for pretrial facilities, $6 million in special funds for supplies and materials for the correctional enterprises, or MCE, and $2 million in reduced food costs. Proposed budget increases include $47 million in employee and retiree health insurance and a $12.5 million increase in the medical and mental health care contract for correctional facilities. On page 16, there is a discussion of the planned closure of the Maryland Correctional Institution at Jessup, or MCIJ. The fiscal 2027 allowance transfers all 305 of MCIJ's authorized positions to Jessup Correctional Institution, or JCI. There is also $18.6 million of non-personnel operating expenses transferred out of the MCI budget that the department has said is being transferred to JCI, Eastern Correctional Institution, Maryland Correctional Institution at Hagerstown, and the Maryland Correctional Training Center. When accounting for these transfers, the fiscal 2027 allowance specifically for correctional facilities increases by just under $7 million. Moving on to personnel on page 18, the fiscal 2027 allowance includes 9,199 authorized positions, which is the same from the 2026 working appropriation. The 2027 allowance also includes a net decrease of 32.5 contractual full-time equivalent positions. There were 35 positions in the department that were abolished due to the voluntary separation program, a little over half of which came from the administration and offices unit. There are two major issues I would like to highlight. The first deals with the hiring of correctional officers and other administrative and community supervision roles. In October 2025, the department reported a total of 859 vacancies in October, or 9.3 vacancy rate. This is an improvement of about 160 fewer vacancies compared to the year before in October 2024. Exhibit 10 on page 19 breaks down the filled positions based on the main employee categories from July 2020 to October 2025. Community supervision agents, also known as parole and probation agents, made modest improvements. In October 2025, there were 887 community supervision agents, an increase of 27 agents from the year before. Administrative positions have also seen improvements. In this instance, administrative positions refers to any position in the department that is not a correctional officer or community supervision agent, which includes a broad range of roles. In October 2025, there were more than 2,700 filled administrative positions, an increase of more than 160 from the previous year. Vacancies are broken down on Exhibit 11 on page 20. As of October 2025, there were 446 vacancies for correctional officers, 352 for administrative positions, and 61 for community supervision agents. Position abolitionment makes it difficult to compare the number of vacancies over time. From fiscal 2021 to fiscal 2026, the number of authorized CO positions has decreased by 170 positions. On page 21, Exhibit 12 shows the monthly changes of filled correctional officer positions. Filled positions of correctional officers have largely remained flat over the last several years. In October 2025, there were 4,751 filled CO positions, which is 17 less than October 2024, and 45 more filled positions than 2 years ago in October 2023. Moving on to page 22, which discusses overtime. Vacancies are one of the main reasons for the increases in overtime costs. Exhibit 13 shows the overtime funding for the department has increased from under $100 million in fiscal 2017 to $217 million in overtime expenditures in fiscal 2025. Data from DBM indicates that in fiscal 25, the department accounted for 60% of the state's total overtime costs. The CO2 and CO sergeant positions alone account for more than 50% of the state's overtime costs. On page 23, Exhibit 14, there's a breakdown of overtime hours per incarcerated individual for each facility from July 2024 to September 2025. In the chart, facilities are shown from the lowest average daily population on the left to the largest facilities on the right. As you can see, facilities with a smaller average daily population tend to have higher numbers of overtime hours per capita, although there are similarly sized facilities with varying amounts of overtime used. In the department's plan for closure of the MCIJ facility, it stated that the positions employed at MCIJ would be transferred to other facilities, partially alleviating the need to use overtime across the Jessup region. In fiscal 2027, the fiscal 2027 allowance transfers all 305 positions at the MCIJ facility to JCI. However, overtime costs at JCI increase by about $3 million or 9%. According to the department's MCIJ closure plan, JCI will be able to eliminate mandatory overtime. However, it anticipates the facility will need to add posts to support programming, leading to higher voluntary overtime levels. In fiscal 2027, DPSES plans to realign vacancies so that the Dorsey-run Correctional Facility and the Maryland Correctional Institution for Women can reduce nearly all of their overtime spending. Overall, the fiscal 2027 allowance projects that overtime expenditures decrease by nearly $13 million, or 6% after accounting for deficiencies. Language in the fiscal 2026 budget bill withheld $500,000 in general funds until DPSES submitted a report with data on total and mandatory CO overtime hours worked and a plan to eliminate the use of mandatory overtime, which was submitted on October 29th, 2025. DLS determined the overtime report to be in compliance with the budget language and recommends the release of the general funds restricted in fiscal 26 and will process a letter to this effect if no objections are raised by the committees. Additionally, DLS also recommends adding budget bill language restricting $250,000 in general funds pending a report on DPSES's efforts to minimize the reliance on overtime, including overtime data for fiscal 2026 and 2027 year to date. This recommendation appears in the administration analysis. The second issue I would like to highlight beginning on page 24 is the new medical and mental health care contract. In 2024, the Board of Public Works awarded contracts to Centurion to provide medical and mental health care services to correctional and pretrial detention facilities. The contract totals $1.6 billion over the next 5 years. The previous vendor, YesCare, received criticism regarding inadequate staffing, service issues, and failure to pay bills. The Office of Legislative Audits, OLA, issued a fiscal compliance audit in 2024 containing 9 findings related to the medical and mental health contracts with YesCare. The audit raised concerns about the previous contractor's inability to meet the contract's minimum staffing requirements. The current contracts require Centurion to provide 909 full-time employees to correctional facilities and 395 full-time employees to pretrial facilities. The minimum contract staffing threshold is 90%. As of June 2025, the contractor reported 81% of positions at correctional facilities were filled and 87% of positions at pretrial facilities were filled. The staffing rates have improved since the contract began in August. However, the staffing rates still remain below the required staffing threshold, and the department has stated that Centurion has been unable to provide auditable staffing reports every month, which indicates that DPSES has been unable to verify the staffing levels the contractor reports. The department has assessed the contractor liquidated damages for failing to meet thresholds in the contract, primarily due to being unable to meet staffing levels. From February to June 2025, the department collected nearly $12 million in liquidated damages from Centurion's invoice payments, the vast majority of which was related to inadequate staffing levels. Another issue raised by the audit of the previous contractor found that the department did not adequately oversee the contractor to ensure medical-related complaints filed by incarcerated individuals were resolved in a timely manner. DPSES conducted an audit of Centurion's responses to grievances and administrative remedy procedures, or ARP complaints. The department reviewed 1,257 grievances and ARP complaints from February to August 2025 and found that 35% were not responded to in a timely manner or no response was provided at all. The department assessed the contractor about $109,000 in liquidated damages for the medical complaints that did not receive a timely response. DLS recommends adding budget bill language restricting $250,000 in general funds pending a report on DPSES's oversight of the inmate healthcare contract, including results from audits of staffing, pay rates, and medical examinations. The recommendation will appear in the DPSES administration analysis. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weinstock, for that very detailed analysis. I will now turn to committee members for any questions. Any questions from the committee for the budget analysts? All right, seeing none, I'll turn it over to Secretary Scruggs and her team. Welcome, Madam Secretary.
Good afternoon, Chair Acevedo, members of the committee. Thank you for having me. For the record, my name is Carolyn J. Scruggs, and I'm the Secretary for the Maryland Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. With me today are Deputy
Madam Secretary, bringing the mic closer. Yep.
Is this better?
Yes.
Okay. With me today are both of my deputy secretaries, my Deputy Secretary of Administration, Toyin Bakare, and my Deputy Secretary of Operations, Mr. David Green. The department appreciates the collaboration with Department of Legislative Services and Mr. Weinstock's thorough analysis and report. We had Mr. Weinstock actually come out and tour our facilities so that we would be able to provide him a high-level overview of what we do here in the department and help him speed up the work of what he does and understanding. I do want to also take a moment to thank our DBM analyst, Christina Huye-Tuyon, for her advice and guidance that she's given us through this. In the analysis, the Department of Legislative Services asked the department to respond to 2 issues and 2 recommendations. The first issue the department was asked to comment on was the increase in assaults and homicide rates in correctional facilities and the actions that we've taken to reduce violence on staff and incarcerated individuals. The commissioner and his leadership team are personally overseeing the wardens and security practices at all of our facilities while confirming the functionality of security equipment and proper deployment at all 13 DOC facilities. The security landscape within correctional facilities over the past 5 years has been made more challenging by increasingly violent sentence correctional populations. Since FY 2019, there has been a 55% increase in the number of new inmates annually entering the Division of Correction facilities for offenses that result in a loss of life. These offenses include murder, manslaughter, felony homicide, and child abuse resulting in death. As a result, 84% of the sentenced population is now serving a sentence for a violent crime against another person. Over the past 10 years, the population has increased by nearly 15%. Nearly a third, or 31.8% of the sentenced inmates were serving a sentence for homicide or manslaughter in FY 2025, compared to a consistent level of nearly 24% of the total population from FY 2009 to FY 2015. In addition, we have implemented monthly reduction of violence meetings, and they are being held at the warden level and the commissioner level that include multidisciplinary teams to review those violence acts and where they're occurring and what the commonality is between those so that corrective action can be taken. These meetings focus on conducting post-incident reviews in an effort to identify areas of improvement in staffing, response protocols, and other preventive measures. At the beginning of this year, under the authority of the new Deputy Secretary of Administration, I also redirected the focus of headquarters-driven security audits. It's something that I've had in the past when I was coming up through the ranks, and we are going to have our security operations teams lead that. It will allow us to also audit ourselves on all of the national standards that we are held accountable to. These audits are going to be focused on direct observation and review of security-related population management, protocols, policy, and the equipment that we use. During FY 25, DPSCS began a body-worn camera pilot program at the Eastern Correctional Institute, Patuxent Institute, North Branch Correctional Institution, and Maryland Correctional Institution for Women. We also included our pretrial facility, Baltimore Central Booking and Intake Center. It's anticipated that full compliance for the body-worn camera system will be completed by this spring. And I'm happy to say that the staff has been very receptive to the use of these body-worn cameras. To ensure our correctional staff are prepared to safely address a more acute increased population, I also expanded the capacity of the crisis de-escalation training in March of 2025. Our crisis de-escalation training is actually a training that I received through the National Institute of Correction some years ago that I thought was very advantageous because it also teaches you how to deal with the mental acuity of individuals that you may have behind bars. And it actually takes you through some processes and some ways to de-escalate some of the behavior that may be driven and then cause particular violence. So we are not only doing that right now, but we're also looking to add that to our academy class so that those coming in understand that mechanism. So I'm pleased to report that so far under the deputy, we have done a train the trainer type of process with this, where we have 232 staff that have been trained that can go back to their facilities and actually start to train other individuals. The second issue we were asked to comment on is the emergency maintenance projects and the prioritization of the funding. We're working with DGS and DBM Capital to ensure that projects already in the pipeline will not be factored into funding, and we eagerly await a comprehensive building assessment unit report for all of our regions that's currently being conducted by DGS. This report will identify which projects are critical and require funding for the dedicated purpose account. Simultaneously, the department has compiled a list of projects across all of our regions and facilities that need immediate attention. Namely, most of them are our fire alarms, which are definitely life safety issues for us, and any physical plant deficiencies that we have. The scope of the work for these projects, along with our prioritization list, have been developed so that the department can hit the ground running once the funding is made available to us. While not all the projects can be addressed immediately, those selected for funding will be prioritized as life safety issues, and they are going to help us to expand the life of our facilities and keep our staff safe. Addressing these concerns will definitely help the number of emergencies that we have and allow us to more effectively allocate other funds so that we don't have to do emergency procurement. The Department of Legislative Services has recommended the department provide a report on our efforts to minimize the reliance on overtime and the report of the department's oversight on the inmate health care contract. And the department agrees with both of those recommendations. Again, as always, I'd like to say that I am truly proud of the hard work that our dedicated staff of officers and civilians do every day. And we are here to answer any questions you have, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Madam Secretary. At this time, I will entertain any committee questions. Delegate Kaiser.
Thank you. I thought the Vice Chair got to you first. All right. I had two questions, and thank you, Madam Secretary, and thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question, part of what I thought I heard, two very different questions. Part of what I thought I heard you say in terms of the increase in the assaults in these was tied to the increase over time, not just in the prison population, but more so in the nature of that prison population being more violent. And is that a simple chart you can provide that shows that data, shows both the increase in the prison population and those percentages? Because, I mean, I think if they line up, I mean, that correlation would really stand out.
Yes, ma'am. We absolutely have that data. I actually did a presentation, not to you all, but I have done a presentation on that data. And I think one of the things to be mindful for is that as we continue to make our community safer, those individuals are the ones that we now have behind the wall. So the same behaviors that they exhibited within the community, they're now exhibiting behind the wall. I think what's different, though, is that when they come in, because we are required to do an intake assessment and to do a mental health review, we're finding that the mental health acuity of many of them is great. And they don't know that while they're in the community. So we're happy to provide that information to you.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, if I could, my other question, not directly in here, but there was the reference to medical issues. And I'm just very curious about the rate of increase you've had over the years of older inmates and their health issues, and how our current facilities aren't really made for people over a certain age with certain health issues. And so how is that being dealt with in Maryland?
So again, thank you for that question. And I think one of the things that you'll find, and this is again data that we're happy to share with you as well, our aging, we do have an aging population, but they are not that high population that requires that medical care. The average age of the incarcerated individual right now is around 35, and these are individuals that are coming to us that have not received health care, that did not know that they were ill until they came to us. There is a 7-day physical you have to have once you come in, and you're required every year, and that's when they're finding out that they have high blood pressure, diabetes, various illnesses that they were not caring for on the outside. We also do see, because of, again, mental health concerns, because of injuries that they never had taken care of them, we also see a high result of hospital runs that come out of our facilities. And that drives overtime quite a bit. When they talk about staffing and driving overtime, that is because for a hospital run, we have to have 2 officers every shift on that incarcerated individual. And those officers are making time and a half on overtime when they stay there greater than 8 hours. So that's an increase as well. But we do have a geriatric population, but they are not the larger population that is ill at this time. Thank you so much. You're welcome.
Thank you, Delegate. Vice Chair Ivey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Secretary, for the work that you've been doing. We've been having this back and forth for years now. To see the pilot program come into fruition, it's really wonderful to see that, and thank you for speaking to that. I was writing down, you said something about how the officers are actually appreciative of having the camera. And I think that it might be because it's not just their word against someone else's at this point. So I just wanted to underline that. I know that staffing is an issue. Overtime is an issue, of course, and we'll continue to partner on that. The healthcare contract.
Okay.
It's pretty glaring. Was 1,257 grievances overall. 35% hadn't been responded to in a timely manner or at all.
So I'm sorry.
No, I'm just, I'm
what I will
giving you the
say to
floor.
you is that when that was immediately brought to my attention, I actually had a meeting with the president of Centurion, Mr. Hamlin. He flew in. We've met about it. He actually dedicated a resource from his Florida location, Ms. Dubin. She's one of their, she's the nurse in Florida that oversees one of the projects. And she came up, and what she did was she put them in line with standard operating procedures that they are doing in that region to help them actually get this in place. I've also put oversight into that, so there is a captain out of my office that works directly with each facility to look at the ARPs, to make sure the ARPs are done timely, and if not, that captain is then referring back to not just that incarcerated individual, but also to the nursing staff at that facility to make sure that it's being done timely. We still have some challenges on the Eastern Shore and out west, but the Jessup facilities are doing really good, and that's important because JCI houses our hospital. To see that come up and improve, we're happy with that. As far as part of it was their staffing, but what I would like the committee to recognize the difference between the staffing with Yes Care and the staffing with Centurion. While Centurion has not met the 90%, and we have wage liquidative damages because of that, their staffing levels on what we call their Appendix R is far greater than the staffing that was in the contract for Yes Care. So they do have more staff on site than Yes Care did. They just have not met the levels that we need to. And where they're lacking, again, is the Eastern Shore, Cumberland, far-reaching areas where there are just challenges in getting individuals to fill those positions.
Wonderful. And thank you for the clarity and the context there. Just coming back to the 438 individuals, or I don't know if those are individuals or multiple grievances that were filed by one individual, so on and so forth. $110,000 was essentially the fine that Centurion had to pay.
So the fines are defined in contract, and our administrative deputy probably can tell you more about that contract than me. But in the contract, each line item is enumerated as to what that cost would be if you are not compliant monthly, weekly, whatever it is.
Yes, that's accurate. So that's how we were able to assess the liquidated damages, even though it may not seem like a high number, but that is how it's been determined.
Sure. Just level setting. From our end, sometimes we want to compel you all to do things. And so last year, we essentially threatened to withhold funding from you all unless you all did X, Y, and Z. And wonderfully, we're all working well together, and we appreciate you all coming to the table and doing the things that we're supposed to be doing here. I don't know if $250 per grievance is enough to make people actually change behavior. And so I just wanted to speak to, I was looking through the report, and 110,000, and I saw the number of grievances, and I pulled out my calculator and divided it, and $250, it just
and I
doesn't
think
seem
you have to also look at the nature of the grievance. So was the grievance that I asked medical that I had a sick call, I needed to come in because I wanted a Tylenol and I didn't get it?
Sure.
Or was it a grievance that I'm bleeding from the leg and no one addressed the wound that I have?
Sure.
So there's an array of grievances there.
Yeah.
And as you stated, some of the grievances were duplicate. They were duplicate because they had not gotten a response in the past. So certainly, and we are able to go back and actually break that down and tell you how many were duplicate and what the natures are if you need it.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair, I'll wrap up here, if you don't mind. If you could get us some more details surrounding those 438 grievances, some questions that do come to mind, and I assume the answer is no. But did anyone pass away that had filed a grievance and they hadn't been responded to? right?
We'll look into that. I'm not aware that anyone did, but we'll look into
Yeah,
that.
something of that nature would hit the headlines.
Absolutely.
But if we could get more clarity, more information from you.
And something of that nature would have been escalated to me, at least it should have, and definitely would have been shared with President Hamlin when I met with him, and that was not the case at the time.
Sure. Well, I know we see you a few more times, and I appreciate working with you. So thank you for your willingness to get some of these answers to us.
Thank you, sir. We'll make sure we get that.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair, and just wanted to echo just some really important for committee members that the Vice Chair mentioned. Secretary Scruggs is coming before us a few more times before we vote on her department's budget. So if you are unable to get any questions in, rest assured she will be back. Delegate Beecham.
I'm new to this, and I was just curious as to when you said something about audits, who audits now?
So we are audited by the American Correctional Association, ACA. I'm glad you asked that question because we just came back from ACA conference this weekend, and 4 of our institutions received 100% compliance for ACA, so we are very proud of that. The 2 that did not, one got 98% and 96%, so they want to come back to see them in 6 months. But that is the standard. ACA actually audits all correctional facilities within the United States, as well as the U.S. territories, and they do the Bureau of Prisons. The other audits that we do are the Maryland Correctional Standards Commission. That actually comes under public safety. They audit the detention centers, so Baltimore City, and Baltimore County, all of the detention centers are audited by them, as well as the correctional facilities. And they set standards from anything from managing inmates and how you properly managing them. Are you properly storing your toxic, and flammable materials? Are they labeled properly? So they have a list. It is on our website if you want to learn more of what each standard is. But we used to do, when I was in uniform, we actually did what was called an internal security audit. We audited ourselves so that when those audits came up every 3 years, we already knew where our deficiencies were. We knew, and it was stopped for some reason. So under the new deputy secretary, I've asked him to reinstitute those audits, and that's something that, Dave, you want to speak just how you're doing that?
Yes, thank you, ma'am, and thank you for that question. As the secretary mentioned, the Maryland Commission on Correctional Standards and the American Correctional Association are the 2 primary bodies that conduct these audits on the department every 3 years. And as the secretary mentioned, we used to hold our own internal security audits. I was a member of that audit team in previous years. And so what we're looking to do is an enhanced focus on direct observation of our security practices, in addition to the things that MCCS and ACA look at for data recording and record keeping and things of that nature. How we're deploying our security technology. How are we controlling population movement and ensuring that the national best practices are being implemented across all of our facilities all of the time. And so we're excited about reinstating those audits.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Delegate Beecham. Madam Secretary, I know you're pressed for time. I do have one quick question just based on your response to DLS's analysis. In the report, it mentioned inmate deaths, and I'm curious what percentage of those inmate deaths are death by suicide? Do you know, is that information that your department keeps? We do maintain that information. I would ask that so that you can have correct information. Can I get that and give it back to you? But yes. We do maintain it, and I can have that sent to you. Okay, good. And then really quickly for you and your team, what programs are currently available for incarcerated persons? Great question. So there are numerous ones. Let's start. So let me first say, let's use MCIW. The reason I'll use the women's is because they're all concentrated in one area, so they have the most programs, the abundance of programs. It can be anything from their GED, high school diploma, that is considered a program, to Goucher, where we've had many women graduate with their bachelor's degree from Goucher College. We also have Listening is Key. We have
anger management. We work with Vehicles for Change. They just recently did a virtual reality teaching them auto mechanics, the first steps of how to be being auto mechanic. And then if you go out into our men's facility, because they're stretched out, each facility does not have everything. So there may be the facility in the west that has carpentry. There's a facility that also has graphic design. There's auto mechanics that is out there. There's masonry that's out there. So what we try to do is one of the things that we've really been exploring is what is the interest of the individual that is returning back into the community? And we're trying to bring those services and programs to them. One of the other things that we do is we partner with Maryland Mediation because we do mediation services, and that program is throughout our agency. We're looking to actually include that also within our youth detention center. And that is because we know that there has to be a connection and a comfort level for that victim that understands that returning citizen coming back into the community. So we are always looking for new programs. We continue to expand that through our reentry efforts. I'm not sure if this committee, the new members of this committee know, but last year I was able to sign an MOU with Chancellor Perman at the University of Maryland system, and we are able to bring all of our Maryland universities now behind the walls. MEHAC has just approved Towson State to come behind the walls now, as well as Anne Arundel Community College will be starting this fall. We started Bowie last semester at JCI. So we are just continuing to expand our educational opportunities. And the last thing that I would share with you with programs is that because we have implemented the tablets to all of our incarcerated individuals, on the tablet, there is an application called Indivo. And in Indivo, it's a number of different programs that you can engage in, anywhere from 6 weeks to 6 months to a year. And they are actually certificate programs that they can receive. So they may need an anger management program. It's just like online classes that you would get in college. And they are currently free to that incarcerated individual.
And through that Surface, the Surface tablet program, you're saying it's available to all?
To every incarcerated individual has a tablet. It's up to you whether you lose permission to have your tablet because you've done something inappropriate with it.
Which gets me to it kind of feeds into my next question, because when you're mentioning the programs, I was curious how many of these programs are available for folks who are on, for example, pre-release versus those who are incarcerated for a much longer time. Can you speak to that?
So Dave is the former case management manager, and they oversee those programs, so I'm gonna kind of let him tackle that.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you for that question. As far as the tablet programming, that is available to anyone of any security level at any facility. The Indivo platform that the Secretary mentioned, it is very much like online learning that anyone could do in the community. Faith-based programming, cognitive behavioral programming, your standard education programming, Khan Academy, you name it and it's there, and it's available to anyone at any security level at any facility.
Gotcha. Okay, I'll stop right there. I think, Madam Secretary, you're coming before us a few more times, and we'll definitely have ample opportunity to talk about, your department, budget, and other things. I do know you have some constraints certain times, so I do want to, allow you and your team this time. If there's any other questions from the committee. All right, well, I have none, Madam Secretary. We will be seeing you soon.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.
Have a good day.
Next, I will call up the Office of Administrative Hearings. I see Chief Administrative Judge Pak is here. Our budget analyst, Mr. Scott Benson, will provide us with the DLS analysis, followed by Chief Judge Pak and his team. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Benson.
There we go. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. My name is Scott Benson, and I'll be presenting the operating analysis for the Office of Administrative Hearings. The Office of Administrative Hearings, or OAH, was established back in 1990 to centralize the hearing functions in various units of state government, as well as to provide an unbiased and objective forum for contested cases involving state agencies. Cases before OAH originate from approximately 30 state agencies that reimburse the OAH based on the proportion of time that it spends on their cases. So you can see in the operating budget summary on page 1, the fiscal 2027 budget increases by $1.7 million, or 8.4%, to $21.7 million. On page 2, on page 2 in Exhibit 1, you can see that 83% of the fiscal 2027 allowance supports salaries and fringe benefits for 114 regular positions. The second largest category is contractual services, which consists of 7% of the allowance and includes $850,000 for the development of a new case management system. Turning to Exhibit 2 on page 3, you can see that the largest increases include funding for the development and implementation of a new case management system, as well as regular personnel costs that are being driven by employee and retiree health insurance. Regarding the case management system, OAH has begun the process of procuring a new system as its current system was created back in 2003 and has been deemed to be obsolete. This project is currently in the early stages of procurement with vendor proposals due in March 2026. And once a proposal is accepted and there's a notice to proceed, OAH anticipates that the new system can be implemented in a year. On page 4, you can see the personnel data that as of December 31st, 2025, OAH had 4 vacant positions. In October 2025, 3 positions were abolished due to the voluntary separation program. These included an office services clerk, a management associate, and an administrative law judge. In Exhibit 3 on page 6, of the 34,484 cases disposed of by OAH in fiscal 2025, about 88% originated in just 3 agencies. The Maryland Department of Health was the agency with the most cases disposed of by OAH in fiscal 2025, increasing from 13,207 cases in fiscal 2024 to 16,219 cases in fiscal 2025. The increase in these cases have largely been driven by cases involving Medicaid eligibility, as well as Medicaid long-term care eligibility. Now, one of the objectives identified in OAH's annual Managing for Results submission is for the agency to dispose of cases in an efficient and timely manner. OAH reported that 99.9% of its decisions were issued in a timely manner in fiscal 2025, but you can see in Exhibit 4 on page 7 that in fiscal 2025, the average processing time increased for all cases, increased for all agencies with cases specifically being tracked. OAH has cited several factors for this increase, including postponements due to good cause, as well as requests to obtain counsel. Now, cases brought before OAH are not strictly resolved via hearings. The agency does encourage parties to reach a settlement when possible, and administrative law judges are assigned by the agency to utilize alternative dispute resolution techniques, or ADR techniques. You can see in Exhibit 5 on page 8 that in fiscal 2025, OAH resolved 45% of their cases using ADR techniques, which was an increase of 7.9 percentage points compared to fiscal 2024. Now, the 2025 Joint Chairman's Report included narrative requesting the inclusion of additional performance measures regarding the use of ADR techniques. You can see in Exhibit 6 on page 9, each agency's share of cases resolved with ADR techniques out of cases in which ADR techniques were requested and used. The 2 agencies that use ADR techniques to resolve these cases most frequently are the Maryland State Department of Education, which used these techniques for 410 cases, and the Maryland Department of Health, which used them for 98 cases. Now, on page 10, you can see the recommended action, and the Department of Legislative Services recommends concluding with the governor's allowance. That concludes my presentation. I can take your questions.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Benson. Any questions for the budget analyst? Seeing none, I'll hand it over to you, Chief Judge Park. Good to see you. Been a minute. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Esabel. It is a pleasure to be here with you today, Vice Chair Julian Abbey, and delegates Mark Chang, Barry Beauchamp, and Kaiser. I am Chief Administrative Law Judge Chung Park of the Office of Administrative Hearings. With me are OAH's Director of Finance and Administration, Danielle Harbel, Director of Operation, Administrative Law Judge John Rydick, and Deputy Director of Operation, Administrative Law Judge Saida Hampton-El behind me, and Director of Quality Assurance, Administrative Law Judge Latonia Dargan, Deputy Director of Quality Assurance, Administrative Law Judge Emily Daneker behind me, and IT Director Tag Ibrahim. I would also like to thank OAH's new legislative analyst, Scott Benson, for his thorough analysis. Scott came to our Hunt Valley headquarters on August 20th, 2025, to receive an overview of our agency and meet members of the OAH's management staff. I appreciate the time that he took to learn about our agency and important work that we do. OAH remains vigilant of its statutorily defined role to provide flexible due process to the citizens of Maryland, and has worked tirelessly to provide fair and impartial hearings to the people of Maryland who are affected by the actions of many Maryland state agencies in a safe, efficient, and timely manner. The accessibility and efficiency of OAH will remain strong as it continues to ensure diligent due process for all Marylanders. OAH concurs with the governor's allowance. I believe you all have OAH's pre-filed testimony. I and members of my management team are here and happy to answer any questions committee members might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Judge Park. Appreciate your office's response. Any questions from the committee for Judge Park? Delegate Kaiser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Judge Park. My question had to do with something that was brought up during the budget presentation about the new computer system that you're getting, and I did hear that you're waiting for vendor proposals. I'm always concerned about the connectivity, and you deal with so many different state agencies. I see the nice list in the back and all the different types of things. How well connected is that computer system going to be with those other agencies, or will it talk to some computer in those other agencies? Is that part of the proposal, this big new computer plan? I'm just curious to hear. Thank you.
Sure. I think my IT director can better explain and answer your questions.
Try to stretch it. You want to? It's not there. It's just Good afternoon. Thank you so much for that question. The integration portion for the RFPs is one that's essential to us, and it's a major part. There are essentially two integrations that we have in the RFP, and the first one is our ability to integrate with the Maryland electronic court system in order to just tie in for any case appeals. The second one is to integrate with the National Institute criminal background check system that we send data to the Maryland Department of Health, which then transmits that data over to the Maryland State Police. So those are the two integrations that are critical in this case management system and are actually in the RFP that are essentially required by any offerer on the RFP itself.
And when I look at the hearing case types by agency, will it be able to provide, is ultimately the goal that you would be able to provide the data by agency, by type of common case or the case type, and I don't know if it's part of the plan to share that with a given agency. It'd be nice to think that they change their practices over time so there's fewer cases going to you all.
I think at this point, agencies ask us for data, and we provide that information right now. In our RFP, reports are a very vital portion. It's not just data in, it's extracting data for other agencies, so they know where they stand with the hearing process. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from the committee for Chief Judge Park and his team? All right, seeing none, good to see you, Chief Judge Park. Hope you're doing well. Good to see your team as well, and hope you have the good rest of the day. Thank you. I just want to, don't worry, this has nothing to do with your office, Judge Park, yeah. I just want to go back to the previous agency, a bit of an oversight on my part. I see there were 2 people that were signed up to testify on the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services budget. And so at this time, I want to call those 2 individuals who are signed up, Heather Warnkin and John Sexton. If they are here, you can make your way to, I see, there we go. And whoever is at the mic first can begin. And just as a reminder for members of the public, non-agency representatives, it's 2 minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. Heather Warnkin. I serve as Executive Director at the Center for Criminal Justice Reform at the University of Baltimore School of Law. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to come up and provide some informational testimony. The Secretary seemed to suggest in this hearing and in a previous budget hearing that it's the population of people who are incarcerated, including noting mental acuity and the nature of underlying offenses as a really important explanation around this alarming increase in assaults and deaths behind the walls. So what I'm hoping to do today is just to really put Maryland's challenges in context so we can take a wider view and a solutions-oriented view. I wanted to make sure that the committee and the body is aware that actually a groundbreaking national report was just released last week, the Safe Inside initiative. It was a rigorous national report funded by the federal government looking at these issues across the country. And Maryland's problems look really similar to a lot of other states. That states, as the report found, have become, prisons have become more violent and nearly 50% deadlier over the past 5 years as states across the country have struggled to keep enough and the right staff on the job. The death rate among incarcerated state individuals increased 47% between 2019 and 24. The number of assaults increased 54% over the same period, and the number of assaults on correctional staff rose 77%. The review found that understaffing cost states more than $2 billion in overtime in 2024, 80% more than the 5 years previous. So this is a crisis of lack of adequate resources, lack of adequate medical and mental health care, and appropriate staffing behind the walls, and it's compounded by dangerously crumbling infrastructure. I will end here by just saying that this is leading to related crisis with enormous fiscal and moral price tags, like the overuse of solitary confinement and very costly lawsuits that the state continues to face based on the treatment of vulnerable people behind the walls. So with all due respect to the Secretary, we were hoping to elevate these issues so that you can consider them when you're making these budgetary decisions.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is John Sexton. I just got out of jail after 37 years. I spent 37 years in the Maryland prison system. I'm not good. Heather did an eloquent job laying that out for you. I'm not going to take a lot of your time. I just want to implore you to please take the time to educate yourself about this system and why the things are happening, the things that are being brought to your attention, the things that you see, the things that are manifesting. take the time to understand or try to understand what the causation of that is. Don't just take for face value, whether it's me, whether it's the secretary or anybody else, what they say. Please take the time to understand how the system is working. It's deplorable, it's dilapidated, and it's a shame to humanity what's going on in there. And I would implore you to please take the time to educate yourself about that system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sexton. Any questions from the committee? Vice Chair Ivey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the two of you for being here today. I really appreciate your input. And I just wanted to ask plainly, like, suggestions you have for us here today. We all agree that understaffing is a huge issue. Resources is a huge issue. What should we be prioritizing, just kind of broadly?
Well, from my perspective, I think number one is the human being. We get caught up in statistics about whether it's staffing or whether these people are here or the money that we're spending there. And all the while, the human beings that are in there aren't developing. And that's the critical issue. A lot of that is if you develop the human beings to be better people, to allow them to reach their potential, a lot of that other stuff is going to go away. A lot of the problems. Secondly, don't get caught up in staffing, whether it be for medical or whether it be for the correctional officers. With all due respect to them, so let's take the medical thing. Just because they reach their specific quota of staffing levels doesn't mean the care that they're going to provide is worth a daggone. So don't get caught up into that. If I was encouraging you, I would say, take the time to understand things that have worked in the past. And if you want to talk about that in a different form, I can do that. I could get other people that can talk to you to tell you, we've been there, we've seen that, and we know it works, and we know what the problems are, right? It's not something that you can do in 5 minutes, but
I wanted John to go first because I think the most important thing is to listen to people with lived experiences, listen to the perspectives behind the walls. A Mother's Cry is here, impacted family members who are trying to reach this body to answer that question. But I just wanted to underscore, and this is will be a great segue to the Office of the Correctional Ombudsman, how important that is to the solutions here and adequately funding the long overdue independent oversight of Maryland's correctional facilities that doesn't have anywhere close to the level of resources it needs currently to even respond to the complaints and the urgent issues that it's coming to their attention, much less to do this type of systemic oversight and problem solving that you're looking for. And then lastly, I would be remiss not to answer this question with decarceration. I mean, there are people behind the walls that do not need to be there. There are people behind the walls with medical and mental health needs that are not appropriate for their current setting. So there's a lot that we're working on and through a lot of policies before other committees in this body to address those needs.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions from the Delegate Beecham?
Yeah, what would be the first correction you would make since you've been there? What would be the very first one?
the very first correction I would make is put the focus on developing these, particularly these young men, because they go in there and they get slung in there around these gangs and the drugs and everything else, and that's it. They're off the fend for themselves. So that means their life starts down with these drugs and with the gangs, and they develop into the lesser of themselves, right? A lot of evil in there. So the first thing I would do that would take care of so many things is if they took the time to put the focus on what is that person doing. If I take this kid in here, yes, he's done something wrong. Let's get him to focus in on what he's done wrong, how he can correct himself, and what his future is going to look like. Because once you do that, all these other issues are going to be so much easier to deal with. They have such an issue right now with contending and trying to manage this system. It isn't about how many COs they got. It's about the despondency that they find in these individuals because they are hopeless. They don't see a future, and all they see is the chaos and the madness that they're surrounded by. And until that gets fixed, everything else is a secondary issue in my mind.
Thank you, Delegate Beecham. Quick question. Heather, during your testimony, you kind of touched on it very quickly about the report. Can you just talk a little bit more about that report that you said came out last year?
It came out last week. So this is hot off the press, so it seems like really good timing to uplift it, and I'm happy to email it so that you have it.
Yeah, if you could.
It's called the Safe Inside Initiative. It's funded by the U.S. Department of Justice, by a collaborative team that did a rigorous national assessment and particularly a deep dive on 12 states across the country. It has individual state scorecards, including Maryland. So again, just to be able to understand these problems in context, and it really corroborates and underscores a lot of the specific findings to come out of the DLS report, including related to violence on incarcerated people, staff, really alarming rise in deaths behind the walls, as well as this perpetual problem of the use of overtime to try to put a Band-Aid on this, which is both not working and only exacerbating the problems.
Gotcha. Yeah, if you could just share that report with the committee, would very much be interested in taking a look at it. Seeing no other questions, thank you both. We will move on to the next agency, which is the Office of the Correctional Ombudsman. We'll start with our budget analyst, Josh Weinstock, followed by Yvonne Briley-Wilson, the Correctional Ombudsman, and her team. Mr. Weinstock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today, I'll be presenting the fiscal 2027 budget for the Office of the Correctional Ombudsman, or OCO. OCO is an independent oversight entity responsible for conducting investigations and reviews of operations within the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, DPSCS, and the Department of Juvenile Services, DJJ. OCO is a newer agency. It was established through Chapter 836 of 2024, effective July 1st, 2024. OCO has the authority to refer investigations for criminal charges if it uncovers illegal acts. The agency currently has 2 units: the Adult Oversight Responsibility Unit, which is responsible for overseeing and investigating the well-being of adults under DPSCS jurisdiction and custody. The second unit is the Juvenile Justice Monitoring Unit, or JJM, which was previously budgeted under the Office of the Attorney General and conducts similar oversight and investigations for children under DJJ custody. The fiscal 2027 budget is just under $2.2 million, which is an increase of about $302,000, or 16%, from the fiscal 2026 working appropriation. Special funds from the Performance Incentive Grant Fund support OCO operations. The Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act of 2025 authorizes the use of up to $1 million from the Performance Incentive Grant Fund for OCO operations each year, beginning in fiscal 2026. The fund is administered by the Justice Reinvestment Oversight Board, subject to the authority of the Executive Director of the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Policy. Exhibit 1 on page 2 shows the breakdown of overall agency spending. The majority of expenditures planned for fiscal 2027, about 56%, support regular OCO personnel costs. The budget also includes about $707,000 for the Juvenile Justice Monitoring Unit, JJM, most of which are personnel costs. The budget also includes $65,000 for contractual payments to support the Correctional Ombudsman Advisory Board, which is mandated in the statute that established OCO. OCO is required to have a 12-member advisory board, and currently 11 of those members have been appointed. Exhibit 2 on page 3 shows the fiscal 2027 proposed budget changes. The fiscal 27 budget proposes an increase of approximately $303,000. Personnel costs make up about 75% of the budget increase from last year to this year, about $226,000. Other increases include contractual personnel costs to support the advisory board, and other increases in cost allocations. Moving on to personnel, on page 3, the number of regular positions remains the same at 13 from the fiscal 26 working appropriation to the fiscal 27 allowance. The fiscal 27 allowance adds 1 contractual position. Personnel positions mostly include administrative and program management roles. As of December 31st, 2025, OCO reported 3 vacancies which they are actively hiring to fill. The agency has indicated that its vacancies include an intake specialist and 2 assistant ombudsman roles who are responsible for investigations of correctional facilities. On the bottom of page 4, one key observation in this analysis relates to getting OCO up and running with information technology and managing for results measures. OCO has been working to establish a website which is required by statute. The website will post reports published by OCO and allow individuals to submit complaints for investigations. OCO is also in the process of obtaining a case management system which would allow the agency to better respond to complaints, improve its ability to track trends, and analyze data to identify legal or policy violations. As of December 2025, the case management system is in the procurement process. The Office of the Correctional Ombudsman did not submit performance metrics and publish a Managing for Results, or MFR, submission with the fiscal 2027 allowance. MFR performance measures, including key goals and objectives, are a primary tool for the Department of Budget and Management and the legislature to monitor how well an agency is achieving its mission. DLS recommends adopting committee narrative requesting a report with detailed agency objectives and performance measures by July 1st, 2026. The recommended actions can be found on page 6. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weinstock. Any questions for the DLS analysts? All right, seeing none, move on now to Ms. Yvonne Briley-Wilson, the Correctional Ombudsman. Welcome.
Dear Ms. Briley-Wilson, thank you for seeing us, hearing us, and valuing us enough to take action. You are a hero. This letter I just shared came from an incarcerated individual after the Office of the Correctional Ombudsman spent several days in a DPSCS facility providing effective oversight and facilitating change. The incarcerated individual, appreciating the impact of our office, presented this letter of thanks. It speaks to the importance of the Maryland Office of the Correctional Ombudsman, OCO, and the work that we do for incarcerated adults and adjudicated and detained youth, your constituents in the state. I am Yvonne Briley-Wilson, the first correctional ombudsman for the state of Maryland, hopefully not the last. Thank you for allowing OCO the opportunity to appear before you today in consideration of our budget and providing the occasion to address and clarify any questions and concerns. Thank you, Mr. Weinstock, for your analysis. I'm joined today not by Adam Cummings, but Janine Meckler, the Deputy Ombudsman for Correctional Oversight, and Marvin Stone, the Deputy Ombudsman for Juvenile Oversight. Unfortunately, Mr. Cummings is ill today, as well as other staff. We would like to provide a brief update to some of OCO's initiatives, outcomes which have been successfully initiated as a result of the FY26 allocation and as a relatively new agency. OCO has officially established boots on the ground beginning in October of 2024. This process began with the hiring of the Correctional Ombudsman and transferring the Juvenile Justice Monitoring Unit under the supervisory authority of OCO. The agency has often drawn an analogy of our work to a tree with 2 branches, correctional oversight and juvenile oversight. While the branches are different, the structure symbolizes unity and a shared purpose while maintaining distinct functions between the 2 visions of oversight. The shared objective include observations, reflections, our philosophical evolution towards a common goal, and most importantly, our team approach to effective oversight. OCO remains steadfast to the mission and mandate to function with transparency, accountability, and impartiality, ensuring that incarcerated adults and detained and adjudicated youth are treated fairly with dignity, humanity, and respect, working to improve DPSCS and DJS while striving to reduce recidivism rates, improve opportunities, and increase public safety upon the return of those behind the wall to the community. OCO emphasizes the importance of collaboration among the agencies we oversee, the individuals in their care and custody, and the staff working within them. We also value the strength of our community partnerships and prioritize the reduction of recidivism and the safety of all Marylanders. Over the last year, OCO has effectively utilized funding to support, among other tasks, the hiring of staff, boots on the ground in both DPS and DJS facilities, building the advisory board, determining methods of maintaining confidentiality within the OCO, between the OCO and incarcerated individuals, and developing processes, all while attempting to address complaints and provide oversight. Since appearing before you last year, OCO has successfully onboarded a deputy ombudsman for correctional oversight, 2 assistant ombudsmen for correctional oversight, one of whom was promoted from the intake specialist position, and the second who is a formerly justice-involved individual. We're really proud about that. On the juvenile oversight side, we have promoted a formerly juvenile monitor to deputy ombudsman for juvenile oversight, and we have sustained a former senior monitor as a senior assistant ombudsman, as well as hiring another individual as an assistant ombudsman with lived experience. OCO currently has exceeded 11 of our 12-member advisory board. The advisory board consists of a group of experts with experience in corrections, parole, probation, reentry specialists, juvenile care, mental health recidivism programs, specialists, formerly incarcerated individuals, and leader of large government returning citizens. We are actively seeking to seat a family member of an incarcerated individual. OCO, in collaboration with DPSCS, has placed several secured mailboxes in focus facilities in Jessup, with OCO having exclusive access to the mailboxes. DPSCS staff have no access. Similarly, to remain consistent with the mandate of creating opportunities for confidential communications, OCO is currently experiencing a pilot program utilizing the Via Path tablets at the DPSCS Dorsey Run facility. OCO hopes to slowly expand this method of communication, releasing facility by facility, expanding first in the Jessup region. In addition to in-person complaints taken by OCO staff while in facilities, OCO has successfully created multiple mechanisms to file complaints or make inquiries. An 844 number, which is 844-OCO-INFO, 844-626-4636. OCO email addresses, oco.contact@maryland.gov, and jod.contact@maryland.gov. The OCO website, which was launched in December 2025, will soon provide another mechanism for filing a complaint with OCO. The impact of OCO is evidenced in our complaint process, which has collectively collected approximately, at the time of the writing of the testimony, 1,978 complaints, 1,457 complaints on the DPSCS side, and 511 on the DJS side, which we did not start taking those stats until later in the year, and does not include the tracking of the incident reports. OCO recognizes the critical role of our new agency and the role that it plays in ensuring that individuals within the care and custody of DPSCS and DJS are treated fairly, with dignity and respect. We know the importance of our work to those individuals and their family members who are your constituents. The goal is sustainability, and OCO intends to continue to be proactive in balancing the needs of those individuals with transparency and partiality, and creating accountability. With the current funding awarded OCO will work to continue providing critical services necessary in our mission. We will continue to remain primarily focused on the Jessup region when exercising our oversight authority to DPSCS, and will address emergent issues as appropriate within other facilities based on staffing assignments and capacity. We will also continue our current oversight of all DGS facilities. It is the expectation that OCO will complete the procurement process for the successful integration of a more appropriate case management system, which will, as already stated, improve OCO's ability to track trends in the number of cases and respond to inquiries and complaints. The system will allow OCO to monitor the submission of complaints, assign cases to investigators, track issues identified by OCO staff, and analyze data to help identify legal or policy violations and to better identify systematic issues for both agencies. The OCO, with the current allocation, will continue to assign 3 assistant ombudsmen for each division respectively. However, it is our hope that you think about what the future looks like. For us, OCO has often been compared to the New Jersey Office of the Correctional Ombudsman. We ask that you consider New Jersey, which was the basis of Senate Bill 134, and Minnesota, which is the only state that mirrors the state of Maryland, and that it provides oversight to the adult and juvenile population. There are a couple of noteworthy points of comparison. Number one, neither ombudsman is responsible for visiting facilities on a regular basis. Number two, the juvenile population is extremely low in the state of Minnesota as compared to Maryland. In New Jersey, the staff of 26 is only responsible for providing oversight to juveniles that are convicted as adults. The average percentage of funding for the Correctional Ombudsman Office tends to be 1% of the total budget of the agencies for which they provide oversight authority. Given this, OCO considers it essential to our future sustainability and eventual growth after this fiscal year that we move towards this model, being cognizant of the fact that OCO provides oversight for 2 agencies and therefore should strive to have our budget representative of 1% of each. We recognize this will take time. The OCO agrees with the recommendation of DLS requiring OCO to submit the MFR prior to July 1, 2026. Veterans of JCI. Dear Ms. Meckler, my name is blacked out for confidentiality reasons, and I spoke with you on your visit to JCI this past December. In short, there are currently many issues that we veterans have been experiencing during the past couple of years which need attention. With that in mind, I would like to formally invite you to meet with the JCI Veterans Group Board members to address the various issues and treatment of veterans within this institution. Our group meets every Wednesday from 11:30 to 1:30 p.m. at the VAC. Whenever it is convenient for you, please contact us to schedule a date to have a special board meeting. Your assistance and expertise would be greatly appreciated. This is another example of the important and impactful work of the Office of Correctional Ombudsman. We have many. We want to work and sustain and grow. Maryland has a unique opportunity of which I have shared with both the Secretary and Acting Secretary. We are uniquely positioned because of the fact that OCO provides oversight to both DPSCS and DJS. We can be the torchbearer of correctional oversight if given the opportunity. We are already an integral part of the Maryland justice system, which is necessary to sustain and grow. Thank you for your time and consideration. We welcome any questions.
All right. Thank you for that response. With that, any questions from the committee? Vice Chair Ivey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations again for your leadership here. I remember last year when you came in front of us and you didn't even have an office yet. And so it's wonderful to see that you all are up and running, doing the great work, the very critical, significant oversight work that you all do. So I just want to get the pleasantries out out of the way ahead of the rest of the discussion. I'm a very strong supporter of your office. I believe I voted for the legislation to enact the creation of it. And I just had one question, and I think you answered it already. The MFR not submitted yet was the question I just scribbled down here. And it sounds like it's not submitted yet.
So there was full transparency. We believe in transparency.
Sure.
We completed it. I'm not sure what happened and why it wasn't conveyed over. That's why we have no issue with submitting that in due time.
Yeah. So just for the record, we're all here. What are those performance metrics? What does that look like then?
So
what does success look like?
we want to monitor the number of complaints, the responses to the complaints. We want to, I don't have it in front of me, I should have brought it. I apologize. We've established our goals and we've established our mission. We, on both sides, on the DJS side and on the DPSCS side, we are already tracking the number of complaints, the categories of complaints, the complaints by institution. We also were possible, some of the complaints are anonymous, but were possible in relating to incarcerated individuals and or adjudicated or detained youth. Want to track the ethnicities.
Sure.
So those are some.
Sure. Wonderful. And I don't disagree with any of that. It sounds fairly straightforward. I was pretty surprised to see that as of January 20th, you all hadn't gotten the report in. And I'm underlining it, and I'm being very
I have no
frank right now.
Yes, and I'm happy to respond. So when we work on reports, it takes us out of facilities.
Sure.
Because of the amount of work. And the report is forthcoming, too, in fact. And I've been in facilities midnight at night. In the last hearing, someone who testified in support talked about or spoke about the hours that they reach out and we respond. So it's balancing the work in terms of being in facilities, in terms of report writing, and on the juvenile side, we have 4+ an annual. So, and all of those things come together. But it will be out and probably within a week or two because of no more than a week or two.
Yeah, I say this with love. Anytime an agency comes to us and our analysts tell us, hey, they haven't submitted this report that they promised they would submit last year, usually we put money that we would restrict from the agency. And we're not having that discussion right now because we all know that this is a brand new entity. We're all looking to help you be successful here. But just for the record, when we ask for a submission, get it to us. It has to be a #1 priority because I can't defend you if you're not giving me something to defend. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Any other questions from the subcommittee? All right, seeing none. I'd just say really quickly, I think the Vice Chair pretty much said it. We run on reports and data here. It informs the work that we do. And I would just ask that if you're an agency head or in a leadership role of an agency and you all commit to providing a report within a certain stipulated time, that you all do that. From your remarks, Madam Ombudswoman, you'd mentioned that the report was completed, but somehow it didn't get over. So do I understand correctly that the report is finished?
I'm confused. The MFR?
Correct.
Yes. Almost. Because
almost
so I don't want to get into. I prefer not to get into.
Yeah. Well, I guess what we're looking for is like clarity.
We have drafts of that. I'm not sure where the disconnect occurred. We have tried to figure that out, but we are going to add to the draft and then submit it.
Okay.
You're talking about the MFR, correct?
Correct. I guess what I'm trying to get clarification on is in your comments, you mentioned that the report was completed, but for some reason it wasn't sent over. So
Yes.
is it complete? And can it be sent over before the July 1st, 2026?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
It won't even take that long.
And you're saying in a week's time?
I'm happy to provide it in a week's time.
Okay,
yes.
all right. So we will look out for that. We appreciate it. If you could furnish the committee with that information.
Absolutely.
Seeing no other questions from subcommittees, congratulations on your role. Hope you all are able to build out the agency so that you all can do the important work of ensuring that those who are in our care and custody are aware of their rights and are being treated fairly while in DPSCS or DJS's custody. So we look forward to that report, and we look forward to working with your office, Madam Ombudswoman. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have 3 people sign up to testify on the OCO's budget. At this time, I'll call them up. I have a Jeffrey Shorter. Is Jeffrey Shorter here? Seeing none. All right. I have a Serena Lau and a Heather Warnkin. And you may begin when you're ready.
Good afternoon. My name is Serena Lau. I'm here on behalf of A Mother's Cry. We are a nonprofit that provides support to mothers and families all across the state of Maryland that have incarcerated loved ones in Maryland state prisons. I personally know what it's like to have an incarcerated loved one and having the anxiety of not hearing from them for a day, that lack of access to them. It is incredibly hard with the system to know what's going on behind the walls. And so you see a headline from the Baltimore Sun saying there's another death in the prison where your loved one is at. And maybe their tablets are shut off or the phones aren't working that day. These are what the families face, and that's the value of having this office, the OCO, being able to have eyes on the situation, being able to enter these facilities and really see what's going on. And it is a team that has answered our emails at 11 p.m. on weekends. That's how committed they are to the work that they do. But of course, their capacity and time and resources and staffing is limited. And right now, they are in those focus facilities, but they need to be able to expand to the western regions, the eastern region, where the bigger prisons are. They need that same level of oversight because it is literally saving lives. And that would be seen in, it's kind of invisible work, right? That you won't see the headlines of another death, but the work that this office is doing is making a tangible impact on families in Maryland whose loved ones are incarcerated right now. And I just urge that you consider the people who are directly impacted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lau. Heather.
Good afternoon. Again, for the record, Heather Warnkin from the University of Baltimore School of Law, Center for Criminal Justice Reform.
I don't need to be too repetitive of what I stated earlier or what Serena from A Mother's Cry just shared, but as one of the organizations that worked hard in coalition with so many other partners throughout the state and country to pass the bill that created the ombudsman, as you all know, often that's when the really hard work begins, the implementation. And so we're here to follow through, to continue to advocate for the support and the resources that they need to do this critically important job. You know, it was absolutely game-changing to have somebody else for people who are suffering behind the walls to be able to call. You know, for example, our center has done a lot of work on the inadequacies with the PREA process, Prison Rape Elimination Act, and the other processes that are supposed to be in place to protect the civil and human rights of the people who both live and also work behind facilities and all those deficiencies. So the fact that that exists now, you know, sometimes I'll be in other committees on the other bills and conditions of confinement issues that we work on, and a member will say something to the effect of, you know, well, isn't that why we passed the ombudsman, or good thing we have the ombudsman? But again, as Serena and others have spoken to, just the enormity of the job that they have across the adult system, across all of the facilities, taking on both the youth system and the adult system, and the first and foremost responsibility that they have to be responsive to the human beings who are reaching out to them. So I thought what the dialogue that just took place beforehand is a great example. How much capacity do you have left over to do the administrative work, to do the systemic work, when your first job is to answer those 1 a.m. emails because someone's loved one died? So we're just here to continue to be part of the conversation to make sure that they get the resources that they need.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions for the witnesses? I'll just say thank you all for being here and just for advocating on behalf of this office and, making sure that the OCO has the resources that they need. I think what I'm hearing is that we need to certainly strengthen this office, but make sure that there are resources so that our I wouldn't say incoming, I mean, you're already in the role, right? Our ombudswoman and her team have what they need so that they're able to do their job. But thank you so very much, Ms. Lau, and thank you, Mrs. Warnken, for your testimony. I'm just going to ask one more time if there's a Jeffrey Shorter here. None? Okay. Moving on to the next agency, we have the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Cannabis Commission. We will begin with our budget analyst, Ms. Yashodhara Rai, followed by Jeffrey A. Kelly, the Executive Director. Ms. Rai, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Committee members, I am Yashodhara Rai, and I'll be presenting the Fiscal 27 budget analysis for the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Cannabis Commission, or ATCC. The chart on page 1 shows that Fiscal 27 budget for ATCC increases by approximately $315,000, which is a 2.7% increase from Fiscal 26. On page 2, Exhibit 1 shows that of the total $12 million, 79% is budgeted for personnel expenses for a total of 60 positions. Exhibit 2 on page 3 details the proposed budget changes. The major driver of allowance change is an increase in personnel expenses for a total of $510,000, with the highest expense in employee and retiree health insurance for $304,000. This increase is partially offset by a reduction of $234,000 in contractual services to support cannabis enforcement efforts. Personnel data is on page 4. There are 60 regular positions and 1 contractual full-time equivalent budgeted for Fiscal 27. As of December 31st, 2025, there was 1 vacant position. However, ATCC notes that this position has now been filled. Exhibit 3 on page 5 addresses ATCC's goal of deterring possession, sale, and transportation of illegal tobacco and alcohol products through inspections. The blue bars show that ATCC inspected about 3,200 retail tobacco establishments in Fiscal 25, surpassing its goal of inspecting at least 15% annually. The red bars show that ATCC inspected about 2,300 licensed alcohol retailers in Fiscal 25, which also surpasses its goal of at least 9% of the total licensed alcohol retail establishments. On page 4, in Exhibit 4, the red bars show that the number of confiscated other tobacco products dropped significantly from about 845,000 confiscations in Fiscal 24 to about 370,000 confiscations in Fiscal 25. Likewise, the blue bars show that the number of confiscated cigarette packs dropped slightly from about 38,000 confiscations in Fiscal 24 to about 32,000 confiscations in Fiscal 25. Exhibit 5 at the top of page 7 shows the total number of alcohol violations and tobacco criminal violations from Fiscal 21 to 25. The number of alcohol violations decreased from 40 in Fiscal 24 and 90 in Fiscal 23 to 23 violations in Fiscal 25. The number of tobacco criminal violations dropped from 393 in Fiscal 24 to 144 in Fiscal 25, and we request ATCC to comment on the reasons for the decreases in alcohol and tobacco criminal violations. The bottom of page 7 and continuing to page 8 discusses the cannabis-related enforcement measures. Chapters 254 and 255 of 2023 and a memorandum of understanding between ATCC and the Maryland Cannabis Administration requires ATCC to carry out inspections of retail businesses selling cannabis products to identify violations of cannabis licensing and registration laws in the state. In fiscal 25, ATCC agents conducted 2,312 unlicensed cannabis inspections as compared to 156 unlicensed cannabis inspections in fiscal 24, and also conducted 8 compliance inspections targeting underage sales in fiscal 25. As was required by committee narrative in the 2025 JCR, ATCC added 2 new performance measures, which are the first one, the number of unlawful tetrahydrocannabinol products seized, which is estimated to be about 115,000 in fiscal 26. And the second is the percentage of unlicensed cannabis inspections resulting in violations being issued. This is estimated to be 11% in fiscal 26. These estimates are based on ATCC's restored authority to enforce provisions of chapters 254 and 255 of 2023 against all unlicensed and illicit retailers by the Appellate Court of Maryland, and ATCC's expanded enforcement powers in accordance with chapters 57 and 58 of 2025, which includes confiscations of sales of intoxicating cannabis products that violates potency, packaging, and labeling requirements, and also issuing citations or other charging documents. Actual data for both of these new performance measures will be available beginning with MFR submission with a fiscal 28 allowance next year. On page 9 is DLS's recommendation to concur with the governor's allowance. Pages 10 through 12 are appendices. This concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fry. Any questions for the DLS analyst? All right, seeing none. Turn now to the Executive Director, Mr. Kelly. You can take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the committee. I am Jeff Kelly, and I'm the Executive Director of the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Cannabis Commission. I've said it many times, really one of the very best jobs in the state of Maryland. I'm honored to have it. And I thank our DLS analyst for her very thoughtful and detailed work on our budget allocation for this year. I concur with her analysis, and I ask you to support her allocation through an appropriation for FY27. We try to be really good stewards of the taxpayers' money. This year, you see that we didn't ask for anything additional. Our budget is largely paying for people and our rent and utilities, and that's just about it. There's not a whole lot of anything else built into this. I am also happy to say we try to be a good place to work, and as our analyst mentioned, we don't have any vacancies right now. Every position is filled, and we're pretty proud of that. And they're filled with really very dedicated members. We also want to be the go-to resource for all of you and your offices, for the industries of alcohol and tobacco specifically, and then for anybody who may be interested, various departments of health, various citizens or other groups that might be interested in the alcohol and tobacco work we do, and also in the work we do combating the unlicensed and illicit cannabis markets. And to do that, we've continued to build out what I think is probably one of the very best websites for state government, for a state entity in Maryland. And I ask you to take a look at that when you get a chance. Very simply, it's atcc.maryland.gov. We continue to build that out year over year. And the idea, the goal is to have a variety of reports that are interactive so that you can not just read the report, but maybe specific data can be available to you. You can pull some of that out. We use AI in the development of some of that. We use a variety of platforms. At the end of the day, we're just trying to build out something that's very accessible and useful to any of our constituents, and again, quite frankly, anybody who may be interested in taking a look at it. Regarding our work specifically about the illicit and unlicensed cannabis market, we had some problems. Adult use cannabis went live on July 1, 2023. And I've been with the ATCC, if you can believe it, we've been around for just over 5 years now. I've been with them for that. But even beyond that, I work for the Comptroller's Office in the Field Enforcement Division, regulating alcohol and tobacco and then motor fuel. And I've been with the combined offices for over 23 years and about 18 years in this role as director. And Our goal is always to educate our constituents, our customers, which are businesses. Most of these people are trying to do things lawfully and correctly. Sometimes they need a little help in nudging to remain compliant, but that's our goal, is to help them be compliant. So July 1, 2023, adult use cannabis comes on board. And immediately in July 2nd, probably, we were out in these locations that are most likely going to be selling the illicit product, and we're giving out pamphlets and brochures with information, giving them resources to get more information, explaining the law to them and what could happen, and then letting them know we'll be back. So we didn't take any enforcement action against these individuals that first time because we wanted to make sure they understood. Wasn't too long after that the Maryland Hemp Coalition in Washington County Circuit Court was able to get an injunction that stopped us from taking any enforcement action against all of these businesses that were selling what we would say is unlicensed and illicit cannabis, THC products. So effectively, we couldn't do any enforcement of, and the key was they were in business prior to July 1, 2023. So they were maybe operating, at least in their mind and maybe in the judge's mind at the time, lawfully. So if they were operating then, we were prohibited from taking any action against them. And the only real enforcement action we could do then is if they were selling to underage consumers, or if there was a business that opened up after July 1, 2023, then we could take action there. Well, that stymied our enforcement efforts. It didn't stop us from visiting these places. It didn't stop us from identifying who they would be, who they are, by doing inspections and leaving information and trying to educate and letting them know about the lawsuit that was in effect, the injunction, and telling them if this injunction is solved at some point, we're going to be back. So we made sure they knew that. But that injunction lasted for over 2 years. Now, little by little, some other businesses saw I guess saw to some extent how lucrative it could be, and they started to open up these illicit, unlicensed businesses. And we were able to take a little bit of enforcement action with them. But over the course of that period of time, I think we were able to maybe generate 18 cases, somewhere around there, and probably take hundreds of dollars worth of product off the market as evidence by us going into a store, seeing it on the shelves, widely and broadly advertised for sale, buying one sample, sending it off to a lab in Philadelphia. That's the only place they could test this for us the way it had to be tested. And about 2 months later, getting those results back, and maybe cumulatively about 3 months later, charging someone. And then we have a couple of months before they go to court. So this could be a 4, 5, 6 month process to do one thing and take one packet off. It wasn't very effective, and we were only able to do it for those businesses that were relatively new startups. So last year, you guys passed House Bill 12 for us. And House Bill 12 created it did several things, but the most significant things in my mind was it created pretty much like a truth in labeling law. It said if you package your cannabis a certain way, Maryland says you can have 10 milligrams per serving, 100 milligrams per package, but you're packaging it as 600 milligrams per serving and 3,000 milligrams per package. You allowed us to say, we believe you. We can take that product off the shelf, all of it. So when you advertised it on the shelf and said that you labeled it a certain way and it didn't come in compliance with what the Maryland Cannabis Administration determined it should be, or it was obviously in violation of what Maryland law was, or, and this is really important, it was clearly advertised and marketed to kids. There were cartoon characters, bright colors. They used names that would look like, the packaging and the names would look like candy, like Skittles or Doritos with a Z instead of an S, or Oreos, or ice cream flavors. Clearly marketed to kids. The law you passed last year allowed us to go into these places and seize all of that product and charge somebody that day. So one day we walk in, a couple hours later we're walking out with the product and we're making charges. So I mentioned before July 1, 2025, we took hundreds of dollars worth of evidence off the market. Since, in the last 7 months, since you gave this additional authority, we've taken over $2.3 million worth of product off the market. And we have the authority to destroy that as well. And we've charged well over 100 individuals with selling this in violation of the provisions of House Bill 12. So thank you very much for that. And I'd say there are a variety of multi-state operators in cannabis, which simply means that they have businesses in a variety of states, not just Maryland, where they sell this cannabis product, some lawfully and licensed and some not. And one of them, which is a pretty good-sized company that's based in California, was operating in Maryland and has just recently decided it's time to close doors and leave. They're not licensed, they're not legal, they're not selling product that's necessarily safe or tested, just in violation of the law. They've decided to close up doors and close their business in Maryland. We take that as a big victory. So I mentioned to you earlier that we try to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money. Last year, you, specifically this committee, appropriated funding for us to build out our licensing system, which was rudimentary for the most part, functional but rudimentary because we were a brand new agency, only been around for a couple of years. You gave us money to build that out to make it much more professional and much more encompassing, gives us better reports, and even more so, you allowed us to build it out so we can have an online portal using Maryland's One Stop program. So today, an applicant goes to Maryland One Stop, starts the application process. If they don't do it correctly or completely, it stops them until they go on. So they know immediate feedback that they've got to do something else in order to move this forward, as opposed to filling out what they fill out, send it into us, we review the application, we see there's a problem, we send them an email or a phone call or send them a notice back, and it takes weeks and weeks to get a simple application completed. Now, it can be done in a matter of hours. Some of them take longer because they require on-site visits, but some can be done in hours or less. So thank you for that. I'm happy to say we came in on budget with that project last year, and it went live on June 11th. 2025, it's been virtually flawless since. We've been receiving rave reviews from the consumers who use it. Nationally, there are companies who represent applicants, a variety of applicants, because our customers are all over the country, and we're getting accolades from these companies who help them remain compliant. So thank you. You gave us the funding for that. It was absolutely, I think, well spent, and the proof is in the pudding. Using just a couple of other things very quickly, using some in-house talent, we developed a series of 4 webinars last year. They were all on the alcohol business. The idea was to try and demystify the alcohol businesses. The first one was just an overview of alcohol generally, ABCs of fuel of alcohol. The second one was featuring Maryland manufacturers, how they got into the business. We interviewed them, how they got into business, tips they have for new entrepreneurs. The third one was with Maryland wholesalers, same thing. Maryland wholesalers that gave tips on how to get into business, and the last was retailers, again, Maryland retailers. Those webinars were done live. We had several people watching, of course, and just if you know anybody who's interested, they still live on our website now. They're recorded, of course, but anybody can come in and take a look at them if they'd like. Still using our in-house talent. About a little over a year ago, the Maryland Vapor Association came to us and said, because we regulate them as well, and they said, we've got a problem. Maryland charges no excise tax for vaping. We charge excise tax for all of our other tobacco products, but not electronic smoking devices. And they said, Maryland doesn't charge that, but they do charge 20% sales tax. And I'm telling you right now, I've got a license and I'm collecting 20%, I'm sending 20% in, but the people down the street aren't doing that. And we thought, well, you're upset, they're beating you competitively perhaps. They gave us a list of 50 places. We went out and looked at these 50 places, and a lot of them were not charging 20%. Many were charging nothing. Some were charging 6%, a few were charging 12%. Very few were charging 20%. So we took it upon ourselves to do what we thought was a statistically significant study and generated a report that just came out at the end of last year. It's the Retailer Adherence to Maryland Tax Requirements Report. Very simply, we think we use a verifiable scientific statistical formula to identify how many locations in the state of Maryland that we're supposed to be paying taxes properly. We identified 371 totally randomly and equally across the state in every jurisdiction. Of the 371 places we inspected, 236 were not charging the appropriate tax. That's amazing. That's 2/3 of the businesses who should be collecting 20% and remitting it to Maryland were not. We've taken that granular data. I just met with Comptroller Learman last week and gave her the granular data. Then she's going to have her compliance team go out and start looking at these places. And I guess I'd say just the last thing to answer the question that our analyst brought up concerning the slight decrease in tobacco and alcohol loss. In 2023, when the Cannabis Reform Act went live, you guys gave us additional funding to hire about 14 PINs to do enforcement work. Now, a couple things. One, we needed time. These are all police officers, sworn agents. It takes time to hire them. They're not somebody you can advertise today and hire in a month. It takes a while, but we hired them. And we got them up and running. But at that time, if you recall, I was saying we were under this injunction from the Washington County Circuit Court. We couldn't do the enforcement on cannabis. So we just put everybody to work on alcohol and tobacco, and our numbers went way through what our MFR numbers would be. We were very high because we weren't going to have them not doing anything, and it was a good chance to get trained up on the alcohol and the tobacco inspections as well. So to put that in perspective, we have about 6,500 tobacco licensees in the state, about 8,500, give or take, alcohol licensees in the state. We put these extra staff out there to do that work. But the next year, as we started to be able to do the cannabis work again, those numbers just naturally came back down. Didn't fall below our expectations, but they came back down from the previous year. So I hope that answers that question. Happy to take any other questions. And very quickly, if I might just pass it off to Mr. Andrew Garrison, who's Director of our Finance Division, can explain how our budget breaks down, especially considering we get some general funds mostly and some reimbursable funds. Andrew.
Thanks, Jeff. Again, briefly, Andrew Garrison, Director of Administration, Finance, and Accountability with the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Cannabis Commission. I, of course, want to thank DLS, the DLS analysts, as well as the committee for y'all's time this afternoon. Of course, we additionally support the DLS recommendation to concur the governor's allowance, and we support the governor's allowance. The one piece I would like to highlight for the committee is, as discussed, our budget is divided between the general fund and the reimbursable fund share. It's about a 70-30 split. It's been kind of slightly ticking up over the last couple of years, as you can see throughout the analysis. What those reimbursable funds really do represent from the budget perspective is the amount of THC enforcement work that we're doing. And what's interesting, something that we've been tracking since we've gained this additional authority that's been mentioned, is closer to, it's the 70-30 split general fund reimbursable fund. Really, when we're looking at the work that our guys are doing, about 3/4 of the time that they're walking into somewhere, they're actually looking for THC as well. And the reason for that is because a lot of these licensed establishments that may already have a tobacco license or another tobacco product license, when we are also going in there, we know that is where some of these unlicensed THC products may be co-locating. So the work really does dovetail and fits in nicely with the work that our staff have already been doing and that they're already trained to do. We're really proud of the work that we've done so far to that end, as Jeff mentioned as well. We've done over 2.3 million in seizures within the first really 6 months of this authority here. And we're excited to continue that. Otherwise, I'm happy to take any questions.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Kelly, and to your team. Questions from the subcommittee? All right, seeing Delegate Kaiser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry I was slow on the, I don't know the word. Anyway, my question, Director Kelly, what has the experience been, and not just from this office, but I guess from your prior experience, about multiple infractions over time? And I'm just thinking of how much better do things get? Do the same people or companies do something wrong again years later? Or should, over time, people stop doing that, and then maybe we'll have declining numbers? So just
No, that's a great question.
Repeat offenders, I guess, is really the question.
Appreciate that. So I really can't comment so much on the cannabis because it's really new to us. I'll just say that with alcohol, our license holders, and we specifically, our commission issues licenses to manufacturers and wholesalers. Every jurisdiction has a local alcohol board that issues to retailers. Regardless, these licenses are the lifeblood of these businesses, and they want to be compliant. Some people dance around not being compliant. But by and large, they want to be compliant because the risk of having that license suspended or revoked ends their business. So they tend to be very compliant. I've had some of our licensees come to us and say, before you find out, let me tell you what we did. And just throw themselves on the sword because they want to keep that license if they can. Regarding tobacco products, that's a little bit different because that's not a license. We do license manufacturers and wholesalers of tobacco products, but not retailers. To be a retail licensor, to be a retail liquor board, you got to go through a hearing. You got to have your background looked at, fill an application, pay an exorbitant amount of money. To be a cigarette retailer, you have to go to the clerk of the court, fill out some paperwork, give them a $300 check for cigarettes and the electronic smoking devices, $25 for other tobacco products, and you walk out with your license. And that's it. And if you get in trouble today and your license for some reason is gone, you go tomorrow and open up a new company and get a new license. It's that simple. So there is a problem with that. What we try to do, and the area we're most effective in today, is when they're making sales to underage consumers. Generally, that's under the purview of the various local departments of health. They'll go out with underage consumers, they'll make purchases. If they're successful in making a purchase, they charge the person who made the sale, and there's some sort of a hearing, whether it's a criminal hearing, a court hearing, a civil hearing locally, they have a hearing. If that entity, that person, is found guilty, that's count one. If there becomes a second violation, it could be the same kind of violation. It could be a violation through a program called SINAR, which is a federal obligation of us to go out and do a certain number of checks every year for sales to underage consumers, and Maryland has to maintain a certain passing rate of 80%. If we have more than 20% failure, some of the funds through the substance and health abuse federal fund are taken from us. If there's a second violation, then that local jurisdiction may hold some kind of a prosecution against the offender. At the same time now, they will refer the license itself to our office for a hearing. And this, in fact, Tom is the prosecutor for us on that. Our hearing will hold our agency will hold that hearing against the license. And if it's found that the licensed operation isn't doing everything they can to stop these sales, then they risk getting a warning, but more likely being suspended or revoked for a period of time. And when that happens, we go out and reinspect during that. We set the date of suspension, and we reinspect during that period of time to make certain there are no sales taking place. And generally speaking, we find there are none. Very rarely are they doing it. You know, and so after that, I'd like to say that they don't sell anymore to minors. They do, but it doesn't happen as often. We don't have a huge recidivism, and we do put a report out every year on the enforcement efforts of underage consumption. When the local boards send us that information, we receive information from the local boards. We compile that data. We submit it, of course, to the General Assembly, and it's got any recidivism as well as first-time events and what the disposition was once it got to our office.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
Sure.
Any other questions from the subcommittee? Seeing none. Appreciate that, Mr. Kelly. Thank you to you and your team. I have two witnesses that are signed up to testify, is a Mr. Andrew Garrison and a Thomas Akris here. Oh, that's two of you all. Okay. All right.
You know, Mr. Chairman, so I don't want you to speak too long on this.
Okay.
Just 30 seconds. You mentioned early on in your testimony that you have one of the best jobs. I don't remember exactly how you described it. And then one of your colleagues mentioned something about what you do. Well, he didn't actually spell out what you do with the seized product. I got a text message. They said, he's enjoying his job too much. Ask him about the seized product.
Thank you. 30 seconds. We maintain all of our seized items under very tight control. We have there's video surveillance. There's extraordinary chains of custody. And when a case is fully disposed of and the property can be dispensed, we're in Baltimore City. We go to what used to be Fresco incinerator and burn it under lots of witnesses and lots of signatures.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. And again, thank you to your team. Seeing no other questions from the subcommittee, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's a good question. Nobody asked me. Yeah.